Could Cody Rhodes lose at WrestleMania? Has Bray Wyatt gotten stale? What Vince McMahon stuff did I actually like? These questions answered and more on today's Ask WrestleJuice. Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. It's time for another Ask WrestleJuice. You guys left a bunch of great questions. Let's get started. Eyes of the Fox asks, is it possible that Roman doesn't lose the titles? Yeah, it's totally possible. I know that Cody's a different story than The Rock would have been or Stone Cold would have been, but it seems like they were planning on continuing on the bloodline story with Roman having these titles past WrestleMania. So I think it's entirely possible they sort of switched plans and are planning on Roman losing the titles at Mania. But that's a really big story beat for them to change because The Rock couldn't make it or Stone Cold couldn't make it. I feel like maybe if the idea was, okay, if we get Rock or Stone Cold, Roman can beat them. But if it's one of our own guys that's here full time, Roman will lose at WrestleMania. Maybe it was a 1A, 1B situation. But I think that given that the original plan evidently was for Roman to win at WrestleMania against The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think it's possible he wins against Cody Rhodes as well, because they might have already had some sort of plan in place post WrestleMania for Roman to hold those titles. So I think it's possible. I would not bet on it. I'd probably, if I had to bet, if I had a gun to my head and I had to bet, probably bet on Cody Rhodes winning at WrestleMania. Alex Hunt says, assuming Roman versus Cody is the main event of night 2, what should main event night 1 of WrestleMania? So given there's no big celebrity involvement besides Logan Paul, which isn't on the scale of like a Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's not going to be a Steve Austin, there's not going to be a Rock. Night 1, I would think they might give that to Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte for Rhea Ripley's big moment. That's a possibility, and that's probably the likeliest scenario. They might give it to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos, because that's a big, big deal as well. If Jay and Jimmy lose their titles in the main event of WrestleMania because they consider night 1 main event a WrestleMania main event, that could give Jay Uso the motivation to then make sure Roman doesn't get bloodline assistance taking on Cody, and Jay essentially takes down the bloodline because without the titles, Roman doesn't have all the stroke and all the power. Daywalker IRL says, do you think Bray Wyatt will ever see a world title again? He seems to be headed for another invincible monster gimmick. We saw how well the title went with his last invincible. I think he will be. I think he'll be world champion again at some point. I don't know how soon that would be, but once the titles are off Roman, and if the titles go split, then all bets are kind of off. You can do that. You could do a thing where Bray has the title, and then you tell some good story that actually moves along where somebody takes the title off him. So I think it's totally within the realm of possibility for Bray to win the title. Lewis Dolby says, do you think Bray has stalled? Yeah, I do. I'll be honest with you. I think he has. I haven't watched SmackDown from Friday from last night yet, so I don't know if there's been any movement beyond what we saw last Friday, which was just like one single shot of Uncle Howdy dipping into frame. But I do think that he has been moving at a bit, I'm not going to say a snail's pace, but damn close. And then he feuded in a gimmick match with LA Knight for 5 minutes. That match was about 5 minutes long. Yeah, he's stalled. He needs to get into something new quick. I don't know what his WrestleMania thing is going to be, although they might have teased it on SmackDown. I've not spoiled it for myself either. Santiago K asks, do you think they'll reference the Shield versus Brotherhood storyline from 2013, where Dustin and Cody had to fight Roman and the rest of the Shield to get their jobs back? Sure. That Triple H is a fan of callbacks, of referencing history. So I could see that happening. I could see that being the case. I don't know how heavy they're going to lean into that particular storyline, but I could see them referencing it. Richard Ives says, do you think Tony Khan will ever write himself into a storyline like we've seen with Bischoff and Vince McMahon in the past? He's been hesitant to, and it's been, 3 years now, over 3 years, and he hasn't really written himself in any storyline, although everybody in storyline still takes their orders from him. He's still referenced. Will he be an on-screen persona? I think if anything, the furthest he'd go is like a Jack Tunney role, where he appears on screen to set up big things. I mean, he appeared on screen when he bought Ring of Honor. He appeared on screen when he had to talk about CM Punk and the Elite being suspended and their titles being vacated. So will he write himself into, but those are like real things. Will he write himself into a story where he has to perform and stuff? I don't think he would, but at the same time, the guy likes certain traditions in pro wrestling. He follows a lot of the same patterns that we've seen in the WWE and other promotions. And in virtually all of those, the booker is involved on screen. So it wouldn't shock me if he did. The precedent is there. I think it's kind of silly that he doesn't, but because there is such a tradition of that. Claus Techno says, what do you think AEW needs to do to bring the same level of interest that people have right now for the Bloodline Sammy Cody storyline? What talent should be involved in this? I think they're going to try something like that. Man, I don't know. I mean, there's so much history between what Cody's been through, what Sammy's been through throughout his time in WWE, and obviously Roman's huge reign. I mean, shit, Roman's been like champion since what was it? Like late 2020, I think it was. Wasn't it late 2020? Which is like less than a year after AEW, which is around when the AEW, like a year after AEW has been around. So like for the vast majority of AEW's existence, Roman's had that one of the titles. He's had the Universal title. So there's a lot of history there. And I think that's one thing that plays so well into the bloodline is the long history. I mean, you go back to 2020 when the Tribal Chief first was a thing. Jey Uso, that story started there. That was 3 years ago. So, I mean, it's coming up on 3 years ago. So that's been a long time. It's a long history for this story to finally be coming to what seems to be a conclusion coming up shortly. So, and you can't manufacture that. You can't replicate that. Can AEW do something if they have some... So far, in my opinion, AEW, their strong suit hasn't been really in-depth storytelling that spans long periods of time. I think they have pieces in place for that stuff. I think that they can utilize what they've set up to a degree. But also AEW sort of moves on very quickly from certain things. I mean, the snail's pace with which Vince McMahon would sometimes book his stories sort of helps this situation because there's been so much hemming and hawing with Vince McMahon that like we're just in a situation where a lot of people have unresolved things. So I don't know. I think that AEW would really need to concoct a story that is, it's like, I don't know, MJF, Hangman, Wardlow, all these people who have history with each other, Mox, Jericho, something that really weaves everybody into it and is told over a long period of time. That might get people interested in it. But it would take a lot of time and a lot of effort. That's in AEW. It's like they really sort of gained so much of their momentum signing people who had made their name in WWE. And CM Punk was sort of the biggest version of that. And so now they do have to rely on storytelling because all the in-ring stuff is there. They have to rely on storytelling. And I think they have some pieces of that, like the Acclaimed. I really like this stuff. I personally, I know some of you probably didn't like this. I like that the Acclaimed lost the titles to the Guns because at Revolution, they're going to win them back. And it's always a bigger pop if a team wins titles back as opposed to, just retaining. Nikolai Belinsky says Vince McMahon's booking has a pretty bad reputation, and many think he's lost touch in his last years on creative. What are some moments or feuds that you really like that happened under his watch in the past couple of years? Kofi Mania. I thought that was a great little way for them to pivot from the original plan and go with Kofi. And Vince seemed completely and totally on hands and interested. And that looked like a story that he actually was invested in and actually put effort into. And it paid off in a really beautiful way. So I think Kofi Mania, and on top of that, like even preceding that, the Daniel Bryan Planet's champion guy, Captain Planet champion, which led into the Kofi Mania stuff. I thought that was all really, really good stuff. I really do. Zeggy says, do you think there's a possibility we would see Zayn versus Rhodes for the title like after Mania and the story with the bloodline. I think it's a possibility if they end up on the same. If Cody ends up being unified champ, and Sammy's on that brand, then I think it's a possibility. Sure. I mean, Sammy's going to be hot coming out of WrestleMania. Big T says, with the pandemic in our rearview mirror, do you think we'll ever see the day where WrestleMania goes back to being a one-night event? Nope. I think if they've proven they can sell out whatever it is, 60,000, 80,000, whatever it is, on 2 nights, then you do that. From a business perspective, from a story perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. I do not see it going back to one night unless there's like a severe downturn in their business fortunes. And you end up going from like WrestleMania 3, 90,000, 93,000, whatever it is, or 73,000, whatever it was, all the way down to like, WrestleMania at arenas, which it was, 10 years later or whatever. That's right. So no, I don't know. I think as long as their business is good, they're going to keep on doing a 2-day WrestleMania. Johnny Burney says, what do you see being the top matches at a Ford Field SummerSlam? Also, will WWE do Clash of the Castle 2 this year? I sure hope so. They should. They absolutely should. Top matches at Ford Field SummerSlam? I don't know. Cody versus Roman 2. How about that one? White Brownie says, do you feel Dynamite starting to feel like NXT Black and Gold was towards its end, where the matches were killer, but not enough storytelling? No, I don't. I think there's enough storytelling in AEW. I said that their strong suit is not storytelling, but in the last days of NXT, the storytelling really was non-existent. It was like, just throw a bunch of dudes and have matches. And Dynamite still has plenty of stories going on. So yeah, no, I think that I don't know, 6 months ago or so, I think Dynamite was really lagging in the story department, but even then they had some stories going on. There was a period where NXT just felt like kind of a chore to get through. Braden Loader says, who do you think will be the next big name signing for WWE? Who's going to be the next big name signing for WWE? Well, a lot of contracts are up at the end of this year. Kenny, the Bucks, and MJF. Although I still think that MJF signed an extension with AEW. I'm going to say the next big name signing is the Elite. Why not? Cameron Shank, we'll finish on this one. I like this question. Out of all the world champions in WWE history, whose career would be unchanged if they had never won a world championship? And the answer is Dolph Ziggler. I don't think him being champion did anything for him at all. He was champion, I think, twice. Is that right? 2 times? And I think they were both cut short because of injuries. But I'll be honest with you. Jinder Mahal. That's another name. Probably Jinder. Yeah, Dolph Ziggler. I mean, I just don't know that he would have been any different had he not. If he had like that world title run. Let's go to the WWE title. Whose career would have been unchanged had they not had the WWE title? Sheamus. None of his world title runs, I think, really changed his career all that much. When I think of Sheamus, I know that he's a former WWE world champion. WWE champion, and he was a big gold belt champion. But do you really think that would have made a difference? What if he had just, instead of winning the WWE title from Triple H, had a high profile feud for the Intercontinental Championship? And I know he cashed in on Roman Reigns' Money in the Bank, but I mean, at some point Roman Reigns just got it back from him, and then Roman had to put it up in the Rumble in 2016. I don't know that Sheamus's multiple world title runs really made much of a difference in his career. Look at where he's at now. He's super popular, mainly because he's been around for a while. And for the last 2 years, he's been putting on really awesome matches, banger after banger, as he says. I feel like you could have erased all the world title stuff from Sheamus, and he might actually be hotter right now because people will be like, hey, you know what? Sheamus would probably be a world champion. So I kind of feel like Sheamus probably would be in the same place even if he hadn't won those world titles, all 3, 4 of them, whatever they were. Anyways, That's going to do it for this episode of Ask WrestleJuice. Thanks for chiming in with your questions. I appreciate it. Check out this video over here. We'll see you over there.